series, and this video that you're listening to now is about physical abuse. More especially, we're looking at physical abuse that one might suffer as a child. But if in any way you have been physically abused, or if you are being physically abused now, whether you're a child or an adult, we want you to have the help that you need. The trauma that is in a family where physical abuse is happening is great, and for the child, mysterious. The child accepts the reality that is there in their family as the only reality they know. And very often, physical abuse is part of their earliest memories. It is very tightly wound up then in their concept of how one is loved and even how one is safe. So this is a very confusing experience for a child, because at one level, deep within them, they know they are not safe when at any moment physical pain and abuse can happen, and yet oftentimes the very people who are there to protect them and love them and keep them safe are the ones who turn around and abuse them. So we can all understand clearly how a child cannot figure out love and safety and security and how to have a relationship with another person. So, of course, this skews our ability to grow up having any sense of how to have a healthy, loving, truly loving relationship. Power and violence and abuse get all turned around inside our young psyches. And the reality is that most people who are physically abusive are people that feel deeply powerless themselves. And there's a good likelihood that they too have been abused and who have confused love and power, and their safety lies in feeling powerful rather than shamed and shameful and weak and dependent, which is probably what they actually feel inside, because again, the likelihood is that they suffered those experiences as children themselves. So how do we even begin to untangle the confusion, the emotional confusion, the psychological confusion, and how do we not become an abuser or a violent person ourselves? When we recognize that we have suffered so much trauma, then it does help to start looking deeper within ourselves. The tendency is always to look out there for the bad person who did this to us. Of course, that's, again, right in the middle of all the confusion, because that bad person is also often the one we love in a parent. And so we can't oftentimes just lop them off and then not have any more pain and suffering. It's not that easy. So we may recognize this person abused me and hurt me, and it will be with me always, and I still love them and care about them, or I'm still very dependent on them and waiting for them to love me the way I need to be loved. Again, we have many layers of confusion when we've suffered such mixed messages throughout our life. So given that the first thing that happens is we need to find insight in order to start unraveling the mystery of how to love people and how to feel safe in the world. The unraveling can come from writing down your life story in all the detail, writing out the abuse, writing out the incidences that you remember, somehow often going back and rereading what we write makes it more real, and we really then get the horror that actually happened to us. We're not writing it down to, in a sense, say who was bad and what they did. We're writing it down to be a witness to ourselves and the pain and suffering that happened to us. Then, once it's written out, take some of those incidences and imagine you as that child or even as an adult going through such horror, and imagine a conversation with yourself, a conversation where you address the pain and suffering that happened to you. Be aware of what someone could have or should have said to address these issues and given you some power to handle them differently. If all of this abuse happened to you as a kid, you had no options. I know many who at the age of 9 or 10 or 11 begin running away, but in our society, oftentimes if you're found, you're returned to your parents, no questions asked. And I know many who chose a life of great fear to live on the streets as teens because they didn't want to return to a home where they were being abused. You did the best you could under whatever circumstances you were living, and give yourself credit for that. Little by little, wash this trauma out of you, rewrite the story, recommit to yourself that you won't allow abusive people in your life anymore, and most of all, treating yourself with loving kindness. Now, if you are being abused today and you're in a situation where abuse is happening and you don't know what to do, first of all, write it out and get clear about what is happening to you. You may have to make a decision to get away from this person, and that may be a scary choice that you have to make. Look for support, look for help. If you need to go to some agency that can help you, or social services, or a home for battered women or battered children, find out what your resources are. Ask a physician, ask a principal or a counselor at a school. Find out what is around that can benefit you. And don't stay in a situation where you are being hurt or injured or abused, even if it's just a way to get some time out and go and stay with family until you can sort things through. Don't stay in a situation where you're getting hurt or your life is at risk.